package photos of the deluxe Lionel from Super7 after seeing the perfect render. The first impressions weren't good. The face looked distorted, there's something off with the torso, the arms were bending where they shouldn't be bending, but still got the figure. I found it this past weekend at Target, and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna take a look at the figure and its construction and articulation, and then compare it to the render and the cartoon and previous figures. Stay tuned. Okay, so some first impressions after taking it out of the box. One thing I was not prepared for is the smell. This figure is stinky, very stinky. It actually smells very similar to those Mexican bootlegs that I reviewed on this channel before. And I would say mostly the He-Man and the Mortal Kombat figures that had this strong smell. The smell will stick to your fingers. And so it remains to be seen if this smell is gonna go away with time or not. I can tell you that with those bootlegs, the smell never went away. Alright, another thing that I could see before even opening this black spot on the chin that I was unable to remove just with water. And there's this crease here on the hair piece. This shoulder joint is stuck 100%, and both knee joints are also stuck. This one I tried to move without heating up, being careful, and what happened is that this piece disassembled, and I just easily put it back in there, and I tried to move the knee again, and again the piece came out and put it back again. I'm noticing now that this knee, you can see some of the joint here and not in here. And another thing is that the bicep pieces are misassembled. This one should go on this arm and this one should go on this arm. I'm gonna go ahead and try to free the joints with hair dryer, and I'm gonna switch the biceps, and then we will continue with the rest of the video. I'm back, and I'm gonna tell you what happened with the knee joint. The reason why it looked weird was because it was assembled incorrectly. Like the peg of the knee joint didn't go fully into the lower leg, and basically distorted the hole in the leg. You can see a comparison with the right leg's hole is much smaller, and the other one was bigger and like distorted. So with enough heat, the hole regained its original shape, and I was able to assemble it back the way it should be. And now the issue is gone. So it was a factory error. So with this figure alone, I had a factory error of the assembly of the knee and swapped bicep parts, and of course, you know, that paint error on the cheek of the figure. I swapped the bicep sections of the arm, and now it looks much better. And the reason why the biceps were assembled incorrectly is because of the pieces themselves are labeled incorrectly. Okay, so the person in the factory that was putting the figure together didn't make a mistake. The mistake was made the molding process. Okay, so this section here has an R sculpted in, and this one has an L, indicating that the way it came in the package was the correct way of assembling. It's just that the symbols were wrong. I have a confession to make. I didn't just heat up the figure and came back here. I actually waited like over 2 days. So it's 2 days in the future after the last section that I recorded, and I can tell you the update on the smell. It's still there. It's less strong, and it sticks less to my fingers, but it's still there. Like the room smell of that. I leave the room and come back, and I'm hit by the weird rubber tire type of rubber car shop smell of this figure. I think it's less strong now, so that gives me hope that in the future it's gonna go away completely. But so far it's still there, days after being taken out of the box. Okay, now I feel I can actually properly talk about the figure now that these extra errors have been fixed. So other things of note is that the neck sculpt, you can see the barbell joint between the neck and the head. Like the head sculpt is missing some section here in the sculpt that would cover that. It's weird. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a complaint in a sea of complaints. All right. Okay. There's a peg here coming out of the belt of the figure that it's of no use for this particular figure. It's very likely done for a re-release of this figure, probably the one with the light up eyes, and it will likely be there to attach the claw shield. If you're curious about using the peg with the claw shield that came with the original Mattel Lionel figure, I'm afraid to report that it just doesn't fit. The hole in here is too small to fit this peg. So I'm sure if you apply enough pressure, you'll be able to maybe able to make it work. You may scratch the paint here and make this hole bigger. It's not something that I'm interested in trying, but yeah, it's not really compatible unless you make some modifications there. You force it there. So the articulation goes as follows. The head can look up this much and down this much. You can also move forward and back. You can move side to side as well. It's a lot of articulation here. Shoulders can rotate and move up and down, and there's a ratchet system there. The place where the shoulder attaches to the bicep can rotate, and it can rotate at the elbow as well. And there's also a hinge in the elbow that doesn't quite bend 90 degrees. And the wrist can rotate and move up and down. One thing about the joints on the arm is that they're quite stiff. So it's not like other figures where you can move and articulate the figure in an intuitive way. For this one is different. For this one is more like you have to deliberately and carefully grab the figure from up both sides of the joint and then be careful, bend it. And that makes it less fun to play around with the figure. Okay. This shoulder that was completely frozen upon taking the figure out of the package, I was able to heat up and freeze those days ago, and it's still free. So that's a good thing. There's a diaphragm joint under the chest that allows the figure to bend back this much and in this much. It can move side to side this amount as well. And there's another joint at the waist that can rotate and move forward and back this much and side to side as well. So in combination with the diaphragm joint, it gives a lot of range of movement to the figure. The legs can move forward this much, back this much, and can he do the splits? Yes, he can. Now the knees and the ankles are the most problematic joints in this figure. They are very stiff. So I was able to free them those days ago, right? 2 days ago. But even when freed, they were quite tough. And now they kind of have reverted back to being frozen. So this one is quite stuck. All right, but it can move. And this one is quite frozen. Okay. And now this moves. And I'm being extra careful with this one because it could break. There's a photo on the Target website. Someone that already broke this knee joint trying to move the figure. Now the ankles are very stiff to move them up and down. And they froze again after these days, and I would need to heat them up again The rocking movement works very well though. So if you excuse me, I am going to go again to the bathroom and hit the ankles with the hair dryer and see if I can free them again. Oh my god. Okay, I'm back and I was able to free the joint again, and now I can move forward and back. Oh, I forgot to mention that the knee can rotate as well. So the articulation is quite good, except for how tough it is to work with. Now, something that I found out while posing the figure is that the paint is coming off of some areas. So check out here the shoulder. There's some blue paint from this section that just rubbed on the shoulder just by moving the figure around. It rubbed the paint from one piece to another. Same thing is happening here in the ab. See here, this paint is being rubbed off by the upper section. Also, there's some paint rub here on the arm that I think is being caused by the claw shield. One positive about the colors of the figure and the general look is that these areas where the plastic hasn't been painted, it doesn't look shiny anymore. You know, normally with Super7 figures, the areas that are not painted, they look way too different than the areas that are painted, because Super7 tends to use this very shiny, somewhat translucent plastic, and this is an example here. See how shiny that leg is, and compare that to Lionel. So this figure doesn't have that problem, which I'm very happy to report. And I think there's something that they did to the plastic, because if you look at the inside of the head, that looks quite shiny like before. So it might be that they're using the same type of plastic, but they put it through a process to reduce the shine. The paint applications are clean overall, although I find some sloppiness right here at the border of the boots. But it's mostly noticeable here in the belt, in this area with the rivets. The eyes are nice. I think they're a bit too big. We'll talk about that later. But it seems to me that each pupil is looking in different directions, right? They're not looking dead to the center, but this one is looking more to this side, and this one is looking more to this other side. The figure has peg holes on the bottom of his feet. I'm glad to report that. However, the holes are quite small for the traditional base for this scale of figures. This is an NECA stand, and the peg goes to the hole to a point, and then after you have to force it. But still, it just doesn't come in. Here's a McFarlane stand, and again, it just goes in a bit and then stops there. It seems that the peg hole is actually very shallow and not deep enough for the pegs on these stands. Comparing with the Mattel one, that one seems to have more air, more space in there for a peg compared to this one. Yeah, this one can go all the way in, but this one goes up to a certain point and then stops. Come on. And look how flat the head looks. What a flat head. The G.I. Joe classified stands work. The figure comes with the sword of omens and the claw shield. This one is basically unpainted except for the Eye of Thundera there. It's cast in this gray plastic, a little bit shiny, metallic looking. And I originally thought it was the same sculpt as the one that came with Yaga, but the one that came with Yaga is actually a bit longer. The blade is longer. And the claw shield is quite show accurate, shiny, reflective, and it's a good size for the figure. and it's easy to put into the figure. You have to remove the hand and just place the glove on top, and it stays there pretty snug. And there's a nice indentation here that allows the arm to bend even when the glove is on. So that's cool. I like that the hands are easy to pop in and out, which is not always the case with this type of figures. The sword is not as easy to carry as the glove or claw shield, because the hand is made with such a strong plastic. It doesn't bend easily, right? And so you have to try to pry it open before putting the sword in, because of the hilt, or this section here. You cannot just slide the handle inside the hand. You need to actually put it this way. So you need to open the hand to be able to slide the sword in. But the arm is so stiff, and also it's sculpted with these long nails, so it's quite painful trying to pry it open to then put the sword in. Again, another aspect that makes the figure a bit less fun to play around with. Now on the sculpt, I think that this is a figure that was sculpted with a huge emphasis on how it looks from the front, but not so much how it looks on the sides. I have a feeling that the chest should protrude a bit more to the front for that heroic figure, and the head as well seems a bit flat on the side. And not only that, but I think the jaw ends too prematurely here at this point, where it should go deeper than that. Here's Duke from the same company as a comparison. See how Duke's jaw extends up all the way up to here? Lionel's ends pretty much at the sideburns, and the sideburns, you could argue, that are placed too forward on his head, and they should have been maybe placed a bit back. So the face looks a bit flat in that sense, and not enough depth. And also ending here makes it look like he's wearing a mask instead of it being an actual head. And also there's the way the forehead slopes inwards as it goes up, where it should have been more in line with this section here, the jaw. Just that the details are not placed where they should in depth. It looks fine from the front, especially not so much from the front. That looks also weird, like the forehead is too small when you look at it dead on. When the figure is facing down a little bit, that's where it looks good. And any other angle, it looks a bit weird. Now, comparing with the render for this figure, the render pretty much looked perfect, like a perfect 3D representation of the Lionel from the cartoon. There was something lost between that render and the finished figure, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what is different, but I have a couple of theories. Let's start with the face. The face, it has that issue that I mentioned before, that it only looks good from one particular point of view, which is front and up. But besides that, I believe that the jaw now looks too round and not as square as originally intended. And as I mentioned before, the eyes are placed a little bit too far apart, and it's throwing off the likeness. There's something about the chest area. I suspect that had the chest area been exactly the same, but made a bit bigger overall, it would fit this body a bit better, and it would have increased that V-shaped silhouette that the character has. And this applies to the back as well. I believe the chest maybe should have been a bit bigger, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. And now a comparison with the animated version. And here we can see the strength of the figure. From this angle and with this pose, it's undeniable how close it looks to the animation model in styles and the proportions. Though you could say that maybe the eyes are a bit too big and the head minus the hair is also maybe a bit too big, but color wise it's quite spot on. But the coloring of the skin, or the darker parts of the skin, maybe they should have been a bit darker, and possibly with a small hint of orange. Not quite like the LJN figure, of course, but looking at these animation cells, you can see that Lionel is in fact supposed to have a bit of a darker skin than what we see in this figure. Though to be fair, some years ago I created a fan game based on the ThunderCats, and the color I gave Lionel's skin is pretty much the same that Super7 gave him, so who am I to judge? If you're curious about how this figure would look with the different skin tone, a forum member from the Foosh has shared his custom and it looks very good, and this is the paint he used. Now let's compare with other figures from the past. Here's the Lionel from the Bandai ThunderCats Classic line. Here's the Funko Lionel. It's basically a Masters of the Universe inspired Lionel, and a favorite from my childhood, this little Lionel here. I always like this one, but you know, it's so small. It's not like a real, quote unquote, real action figure. It was either this or the big LJN figure. I no longer have the LJN figure, but I was never a huge fan of that one. This one was better in my eyes. Was way much closer to the cartoon. It definitely has seen better days. Here's with the Lionel from Mattel, which is a figure I always had an issue with because of the Masters of the Universe proportions that I felt shouldn't have been used for ThunderCats. But that being said, even with those issues, I always loved this figure, and my display always rotates because I never have enough space to display all my figures. But this one, along with the other Mattel offerings, have always been on display because these are great figures, not only in look but also as hand candy. I tend to grab this when I'm watching TV or something, and although I always wanted something more in terms of this one, in terms of the proportions and faithfulness to the cartoon design. But this is way better as a toy. You can place an Masters of the Universe Origins head on this figure. The peg is a bit smaller on the ThunderCats figure, so you can place the head. It's gonna be a bit loose, right? So you will need to add some blue tack or something to keep it in place. But size-wise, it kind of works, right? And I say this because next year Mattel is going to release a crossover of ThunderCats with Masters of the Universe, and who knows? Maybe they will be in the Origins line, and maybe Lionel's head is going to be a traditional Lionel head and not, not with that weird helmet on or anything like that. And maybe that one will look better on this body. Who knows? Remains to be seen. Objectively, not a good figure. In terms of design and engineering, in terms of material selection, paint selection and application, QC. But that being said, this is the plot twist. I love this figure. Even if it misses the mark, it is still closer. The end product is a bit closer to what I wanted than other interpretations of Lionel in figure form. If you're unsure about getting this figure and just want a representation of Lionel on your shelf, and you don't care that it looks like in the cartoon, if you look at these two, right, if you don't have any Lionel figure and just look at these two and you're like, well, I prefer the way this one looks, then I think you should get this one. Forget about the additional articulation about this one, or the fact that it doesn't have pins in the elbows and knees. Those are small details. Even with those limitations on this one, this is still the better figure. it's constructed better. It's easier to get him to hold the accessories and such. It doesn't have a weird smell. And when I say this one, I mean the one released by Mattel, not the re-release by Super7, which already was a downgrade in terms of looks. It had darker skin, translucent plastic, just not questionable paint applications. This is the one. This is the better toy. This is just to be considered only if you, like me, were annoyed that this one didn't look more like a cartoon. If that's not an issue for you, and I know for a lot of people it isn't, absolutely get this one. If you already have this one, just stick with this one, and don't bother with this one. Okay, this is just headaches after headaches. But me, because I wanted something more close to the cartoon, I really like this, and I'm very glad it exists. I would have preferred if it didn't miss the mark so much, but I am glad it exists. I'm very glad I found it. I'm glad I have it. I'm glad that it was not sold at the traditional Ultimates price of $55. Instead being sold at $35. It's still a lot for what this is, but I'm still glad that this exists and I have it. So I'm in the process of repainting the face. I already tried here in the chin, and it works. I'm using bone white, and it matches pretty well with the existent lighter parts of the skin. So, and I already tried eliminating some of the what this eyelash line at the end of the eye, or whatever you would call it. I'm gonna need to refine that with a different brush and do the same on this side, and that way I will create the illusion that the eye is smaller than what it is. That's it. And this is how it looks now. And now I am going to try to fix the pupils, but instead of going and painting the whole pupil, let's try something simpler first, and hopefully that works enough. What I'm going to do is just add some black in around the inner parts of the pupil. For that, I am going to be using this Gundam marker. Alright, that's my custom layer now. Some minor adjustments that I think make a world of difference to make the figure more look better and closer to the source material. Okay, so new updates, some days after the last segment and almost 2 weeks since I first opened the figure. The smell has gone away mostly, completely. It doesn't stink up the room. The smell is present, but you have to get very close to the figure to notice it. And it does stick to my fingers still a little bit, but again, way less. So the ankle joints are stuck, and they got stuck fairly quickly after the last time I freed them. Not more than 15 minutes passed before they got stuck again. All right, so that's a permanent problem. It's been a bit easier and easier to handle the figure and pose it. I guess I got used to it. I got used to how to. I got trained. By the way, you can see in here the ratchet system. Maybe if these protruding sections were a bit shorter, they wouldn't be that tricky to articulate. But mostly, I am very glad that I made those adjustments on the biceps and the eyes. So honestly, when I see the figure now, I think it looks very cool. The more I have the figure and look at it and handle it and stuff, the more and more I like it. So this is a figure that, with a bit of time and making the adjustments you find adequate, it becomes very worthy of being part of your collection. It's not the same. Not the same can be said for other Super 7 figures, in which initial issues and are just as annoying the first day compared to few years down the line. This is different, and yeah, I'm very happy with this figure. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.